ended up managing 4 artists, one of whom I literally broke their career. Vulnerability Diaries number 2. Sometimes you're good at things and being good doesn't matter. And objectively, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna say this within the context that I mean it very soon, but I was just thinking about my years working in the music industry, and I just started thinking, damn, I really was so good at that. I was objectively good in the sense that I was extremely resourceful, highly organized, highly professional, knew how to turn things over, super creative. I have a marketing degree, so I know how to market. I know how to do release rollouts, plans, strategies, all of that. And it's just funny how none of that really mattered. But then I start to wonder, if none of it mattered, then was I really good at it? But I guess it's the fact that I was good at it objectively, but not good at it in reality or how it played out. Stay with me. One of the things that I learned about the music industry that I will always take with me, and this was my demise, and I know the demise of a lot of people that I know that have left. If you don't have enough time, you have to have the money and the connections. If you don't have the money, you have to have the time and the connections. And if you don't have the connections, you have to have the time and the money. All 3 of those things, time, money, and connections, resources, networks, etc. That is really how you survive in the music industry. And I would argue heavy up on the money and the connections, even more so than the time, because the amount of time you have to put in if you don't have money or connections, like, you damned. At that point, it's looking grim. But I know people that have made it. I know people that have made it that way. I know people that have literally gone from being someone grinding on the sidelines to managing some of the top acts of today. Some of it is luck, of course. I personally feel like it's just their path, but I do think you have to think about whether or not you have the time, the money, and the resources to put in. That folds into the greater reality that I was talking about, right? Because for me, I didn't have the money. I barely had the connections. Like, I only had a certain number of connections within the world I was in, but I didn't have many connections outside of that world into the broader industry that would have helped me, and that was an issue. And then I was chasing the time. I spent so much time burning out because I had a full-time job, and I still have a full-time job, and I was doing 3 other jobs on top of that. At one point, I was literally managing like 3 to 4 artists on top of working at a label, being a marketing director, on top of working at like doing events, like doing social media strategy and consultation and a full-time job. Like, that's insane. You know what I'm saying? Most people can't do that. And thank goodness that I did that when I was in my 20s. But I say all that to say, I was so good at the parts of the job that mattered. Once I realized that the quantity and the level, and honestly, the quality of the work that I was doing wasn't paying off and wasn't making the impact that made sense for how much I was putting in, that's when everything fell apart for me. And that's when I started to kind of pull my foot off the gas, because I was like, I'm doing all of this for what? I'm sending all these emails, I'm bending over backwards, I'm doing all this creative strategy and brainstorming and marketing and blah, 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 blah. I'm using measly dollars to try to push these releases and pour all that just to what? Feel like I'm right back where I started, and arguably feel like I'm where I would be even if I hadn't done all that. And that's what really used to get to me. And that's really why I left the music industry, was because I started to realize that there were gaps that I understood. I saw those gaps, but there was no way that I could fill them given what I had on the table in front of me, given where I was at, where I was in life. Again, my resources, my time, my money, my connections, my network. Yeah, sure, you can always be networking, right? But there's only but so much you can do to fill those networking gaps in a way that makes sense over time. Like, I needed the networks then, like, that's cool. I could put in the work in 6 months to build a network, but no, I needed them now. And also, again, going back to the other components of my life, nothing else was allowing me to build those networks. Like, I had a full-time job. I needed to survive. It's not like I could just be out at networking events all day and night. Thinking about the workload that I used to have is crazy. And also simultaneously, sometimes I beat myself up so much about the ways that my life could have been, when in reality, I know that I did the best I could. And I also really was stellar. That's part of this whole thing, is to say sometimes you literally are stellar, extraordinary, going above and beyond, absolutely a star at what you're doing. Doesn't matter. Like, that doesn't matter. And in some ways you could argue that that is what, divine timing, what that whole idea of like what's yours will be yours, right? Like sometimes you can do everything you want and it's not going to be yours. You can try your hardest and whatever you're searching for, whatever you're chasing, you're just not going to get it because it wasn't meant to be yours to begin with. I've realized that in a lot of ways as I look back on that period of my life, especially as I think about what moving forward in music looks like for me. As I take on the idea of becoming an artist myself, what does that work look like? How do I bridge the gaps that I anticipate for myself in the future? But also, this is the first time I've actually acknowledged the work that I did and pat myself on the back and said, you know what, Tate, good job. Because you did a good job with what you were given. You can only do a good job with what you have. Like, I was a good steward of everything that I had in front of me, and it just wasn't enough. And I'm proud of myself for getting to the point where I can say that with confidence, where I cannot look back on my short-lived career, I guess you could say, in music and feel like I'm a failure or feel like I should have, could have, would have. All of that happened for a reason. And honestly, I'm gonna be really grounded in pride for myself at this moment. And I'm gonna say, I got the craziest opportunities in music. Craziest. I went from being a writer at a small EDM blog to then climbing into being the marketing director of that blog, which, mind you, I just want to say this right now. I designed some stuff for their social media that went on to become iconic. Okay. I remember I was making some graphics. I looked to our competitors. I looked to people doing the same things as us, and they were making the same graphics I was making. I was like, T is giving trendsetter. But anyway, I started at a writing blog, ended up being a marketing director there, ended up managing 4 artists, one of whom I literally broke their career. Like, I took this artist from discovery to their big break. I wrote their first press release for them. I got them their first label signing. I got them their first tour date. I went with them through the process of getting a booking agent. And it's just so crazy. I went from doing that. Then I did an externship at UTA. I got offered a job at one of the biggest event producers in the country. When I think about my life, when I think about all of the lives that I've lived and all of the things that I've accomplished, whether or not I pursued those opportunities, right? Because some of those opportunities I didn't pursue. Now, the UTA externship, that was T. I did that. I did also apply for UTA after, and I didn't get a job there. But out of the grace of God, because I don't want to be a booking agent. I know that. Again, that huge opportunity with that big event company, I turned that down, and I thought that was my dream job. And if you actually look back on my channel, I might put a card in here. I think you can find the video where I talk about that opportunity. And I literally talk about turning down what I thought was my dream job. I've had so many crazy opportunities. I've seen artists through crazy sync licensing deals and bucket list bookings and just all of this stuff. And I'm like, wow, you really did that. And I did that not with being a Nepo baby, not having any money. Like putting my last of my money into my artist projects sometimes. Barely having a network at all. I don't know anyone in music. I didn't have any connections. I don't got no family in music, none of that. And I'm just so proud of myself. And I'm so proud that I got to a point sitting here today, just now, you were actively seeing me get to this point where I look back at that woman, at that young woman, and I say, congratulations for doing things that you might not have ever thought that you would do or could do. Congratulations on pivoting. Congratulations on being a girl that your younger self would have looked up to. And I'm now getting emotional because I think I'm realizing, especially as I continue along this path, this year, my goal phrase is do hard things. And I think I'm finally realizing that all my life I've done hard things. And I will continue to do them. And the hard thing, it stays, but it shifts. Now it's not making EPKs or writing press releases or pitching to labels. Now it's making long form on YouTube and writing on Substack, carving out a new lane for myself, taking care of myself. And I'm so thankful that despite it all, I'm finally realizing I've always shown up for myself. But even then, I think for so long, I was showing up for other people. And that's what was motivating me. And now I think the reason why I'm so emotional is because I'm finally showing up for myself. All of that effort that I did in the music industry, that was to build other people's projects. That was to literally support others. And I'm finally turning all of that onto myself and seeing how far it can get me. And it's a crazy, crazy journey, and it's beautiful. And it's hard to do that as someone who loves literally pushing people to be their best, helping people to be their best person. But I can't wait to help myself be my best person. So yeah. That's all for today.